The morning Patricia Mercer found the documents, she had just finished packing 3 school lunches, signed a permission slip for her youngest son's field trip, and started a load of laundry. It was an ordinary Tuesday, the kind of Tuesday that had made up the last 18 years of her life. She was not looking for anything. She was simply trying to find the insurance papers her husband had asked her to locate from his home office. Instead, she found a folder. And inside that folder was a single transfer document that told her everything her husband had been hiding for the past 2 years. Daniel Mercer was not the kind of man people suspected of anything. He was the kind of man people trusted instinctively. Warm handshake, easy smile, the sort of person who remembered your name the second time he met you and made you feel like the most important person in the room. He had built his first restaurant at 26 years old with a loan from his father and an idea he believed in completely. By the time he was 40, he had 17 locations across 4 states under the name Mercer Kitchen. Food critics loved him. Employees stayed for years. He won a James Beard nomination that he framed and hung in every single one of his restaurants. Patricia had been there for all of it. They had met in college, in a literature class neither of them particularly wanted to take. She had been sitting 2 rows ahead of him, and he had passed her a note asking if she understood what the professor was talking about. She had written back that she did not, but that she was willing to figure it out if he was. They had been together from that day forward. She dropped her plans to pursue a graduate degree when their first child came, then their second, then their third. She managed the household, raised their children, supported every expansion, every risk, every late night that Daniel spent building something she believed in as much as he did. She never asked for a salary, she never asked for recognition. She trusted him completely. Sophia Lane entered the picture in 2019. She had been brought in as a business consultant to help Mercer Kitchen expand into the Midwest market. She was sharp, well-connected, and extremely good at her job. Daniel introduced her to Patricia at a company dinner as a key part of the team. Patricia shook her hand and thought nothing of it. People came and went in the business. That was how it worked. What Patricia did not know was that by the time that dinner took place, Daniel and Sophia had already been involved for 7 months, and they had already begun making plans. The document Patricia found that Tuesday morning was a share transfer agreement. In it, Daniel had transferred 60% of Mercer Kitchen's total ownership to Sophia Lane, listed as a business partner and co-investor. The transfer had been executed 14 months earlier, quietly through a law firm that Daniel had never mentioned to Patricia. On paper, Sophia now owned the majority of a restaurant chain worth an estimated $38 million. Patricia sat on the floor of that office for a very long time. Then she took photographs of every page of every document in that folder. She put everything back exactly as she had found it. She finished the laundry, she picked up her children from school, she made dinner, and that evening, when Daniel came home and asked if she had found the insurance papers, she said yes and handed them to him, and watched his face for any trace of what she now knew. There was none. He had no idea she had found anything. She called an attorney the next morning. Her attorney was a woman named Claire Watkins, and she had been practicing family law in Chicago for 23 years. When Patricia sat down and laid out what she had found, Claire listened without interrupting. When Patricia finished, Claire told her that what she was describing was not simply a divorce case. It was a coordinated financial conspiracy. And the moment Daniel filed for divorce, which Claire suspected he was already preparing to do, Patricia would be entitled to half of the marital estate. But if 60% of that estate had already been transferred to a third party, collecting what was rightfully hers would require proving that the transfer was fraudulent. Patricia told her to do whatever it took. Claire Watkins filed for divorce on Patricia's behalf before Daniel could file first. The move caught him completely off guard. Within 48 hours, Daniel had retained his own legal team, and the battle lines were drawn. Daniel's attorneys argued that the share transfer to Sophia was a legitimate business transaction. They claimed that Sophia had invested significant capital into the expansion of Mercer Kitchen, and that her ownership stake reflected that investment. They presented financial documents showing wire transfers from Sophia's accounts into the business over a period of 18 months. Claire Watkins was ready for every single one of those arguments. She had spent the weeks before filing quietly building her case. She had retained a forensic accountant who had spent 30 years untangling complex financial structures in divorce litigation. And what that accountant found when she examined Mercer Kitchen's books was a pattern that told a very different story from the one Daniel's attorneys were presenting. The wire transfers from Sophia's accounts were real, but the forensic accountant traced the origin of those funds and discovered that a significant portion of them had come from a separate LLC that Daniel himself had established 2 years earlier under a name that had no obvious connection to him. Money had moved from Mercer Kitchen into that LLC, and from that LLC into Sophia's personal accounts, and from Sophia's accounts back into Mercer Kitchen as supposed investment capital. It was a circle. Daniel had essentially used his own company's money to manufacture the appearance of an outside investment, creating a paper trail designed to make Sophia's ownership look legitimate. Claire presented this finding to the court in methodical, devastating detail. The forensic accountant took the stand for 2 full days. She walked the judge through every transaction, every transfer, every shell structure. She explained in plain language how the scheme worked and why the financial records told a fundamentally different story from what Daniel's team had submitted. She concluded her testimony by stating that, in her professional opinion, the share transfer to Sophia Lane was not a legitimate business transaction. It was a deliberate attempt to move marital assets out of reach before a divorce proceeding. Then Claire called Sophia Lane to the stand. Sophia had retained her own separate attorney, which told the court something in itself. She answered questions carefully, with the practiced composure of someone who had prepared extensively. But Claire had done her homework. She had obtained phone records, email threads, and text message logs through the discovery process. And what those records showed was a level of coordination between Daniel and Sophia that went far beyond a business relationship. There were messages discussing the timing of the divorce, messages about how to structure the transfer to withstand legal scrutiny. One message, sent from Daniel to Sophia 8 months before Patricia found the folder, read simply, "By the time she figures it out, it will already be done." Claire read that message aloud in the courtroom. The silence that followed lasted a long time. Mercer Kitchen's Daniel team attempted to reframe the messages as being taken out of context. They argued that the language was ambiguous and that the transfer remained a valid business arrangement regardless of the personal relationship between the parties. The judge presiding over the case, the Honorable James C. Calloway, had spent 18 years on the family court bench and had heard a great many explanations in that time. He listened to every argument with complete patience. When he delivered his ruling, he was direct. He found that the share transfer to Sophia Lane had been executed with the intent to defraud Patricia of her rightful share of the marital estate. He declared the transfer void and ordered the full ownership of Mercer Kitchen to be treated as marital property subject to division. He awarded Patricia 50% of the total value of the business, along with the family home, primary custody of all 3 children, and a financial settlement that her attorney described publicly only as appropriate given the circumstances. He also referred the matter to the state's attorney for review of potential fraud charges related to the financial structuring that had been presented in evidence. Daniel Mercer stood in that courtroom and said nothing. His attorney placed a hand on his arm. Outside, the cameras were already waiting. Patricia Mercer did not speak to the press that day. She drove straight from the courthouse to her children's school. She sat in the parking lot for a few minutes before going inside. Then she walked in and signed her youngest son out early, took him to get ice cream, and listened to him talk about his week. She had spent 18 years building a life she believed in. A man she trusted had spent 2 of those years quietly trying to take it from her, and in the end, a courtroom had given it back. Mercer Techin still operates today, under new management, with a new name. And somewhere in Chicago, 3 children are growing up in a house their mother fought to keep.